It all started 4 days before Easter in the spring of 2004. The day was just beginning to wind down, the sun dipping low in the sky, casting a warm glow over our little neighborhood. I was out front, mowing the lawn, enjoying the fresh scent of cut grass and the satisfaction of a job well done. It was a typical evening in Carefree, our subdivision, where every house had a well-maintained lawn, large mature trees that offered shade, and friendly neighbors who would wave as they passed by. Buddy, our golden retriever, was roaming nearby, as he often did. Buddy was known as the neighborhood dog, friendly, well-behaved, and loved by everyone. We'd rescued him from the animal shelter when he was 4, and he'd been the perfect dog from day one. At 80 pounds, he was a big, lovable guy who always knew how to make people smile. As I was wrapping up, pushing the mower toward the garage, Buddy's ears perked up. He heard something, a faint rustling sound coming from the narrow side yard between the gate that led to the backyard and the front yard. Always curious, Buddy trotted over to investigate. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I heard a squeaking sound, and before I knew it, Buddy was standing in front of me, proudly plopping what looked like a fuzzy tennis ball at my feet. Only, this wasn't a tennis ball. It was screeching. Buddy, a little startled himself, took a step back. Normally, our tennis balls don't complain, but Buddy's desire for a little fun and exercise quickly overrode his confusion. He looked up at me, tail wagging as if asking, "Are you going to throw it or what?" I bent down to get a closer look, and that's when I realized what Buddy had brought me wasn't a tennis ball at all. It was a tiny, trembling baby bunny, no bigger than my fist. The little guy was gray, with fur as soft as a whisper, and he looked scared out of his mind. It was clear that his home had probably been disturbed by the lawnmower, and now he was here, at my feet, scared and alone. My first instinct was to rush back into the garage. I grabbed an empty bucket and carefully scooped up the little bunny, who didn't resist at all. He was too frightened to move, his tiny heart racing in his chest. I brought him inside, and that's when the real adventure began. The kids were thrilled, of course. Elizabeth, my oldest daughter, who had just turned 10 a few days earlier, was especially excited. She'd always loved animals, and there was an instant bond between her and the little bunny. We named him Fetch, partly because of how Buddy had fetched him, and partly because it just seemed to fit. Marie, my wife, was a bit more skeptical at first. She had grown up on a 100-acre dairy farm and was no stranger to animals. But a wild bunny was a different story. Still, Marie quickly took charge, finding a temporary cage, buying food, bedding, and even doing some research online about how to care for a rabbit. She was determined to do things right, and it wasn't long before she was just as invested as the rest of us, though she might not have admitted it outright. Fetch quickly became a part of our family. He was surprisingly calm for a wild rabbit, and after just one night, it was clear that he was beginning to feel at home. We were amazed at how quickly he adapted, and before long, he had free range of the house. We even managed to somewhat successfully potty train him, which was a small miracle in itself. Elizabeth, of course, was Fetch's primary caretaker. She spent hours with him, making sure he was comfortable, feeding him, and even teaching him a few simple tricks. The two of them were inseparable, and it was clear that Fetch adored her just as much as she adored him. Marie, with her 4-H background, saw an opportunity to get Elizabeth interested in the program. They even entered Fetch into the local fair, where he and Elizabeth won a red ribbon, a proud moment for both of them. Timothy and Daniel, my two sons, were more interested in their video games than in Fetch, but they still found time to play with him. They would lay on the carpet, acting as human obstacles for Fetch to hop over, laughing every time he successfully cleared them. Rachel, my youngest daughter, was Elizabeth's little helper, always trying to do everything her big sister did. She loved Fetch just as much and spent plenty of time with him, even if it was just to watch him nibble on some grass. Buddy, meanwhile, remained a gentle giant. Often, he would be lying on the floor or his bed, and Fetch would come up to him, sniff his nose, and try to get his attention. Buddy would smile in that way only dogs can, letting it happen, but always careful not to move too much. He was a big dog after all, and didn't want to accidentally hurt his tiny friend. There was one time when Fetch, being the bold little bunny he was, hopped right up onto Buddy's back and decided to take a nap. Buddy didn't mind at all. He just lay there, still and content, while Fetch rested. Fetch's days were filled with adventure. We would take him outside into the backyard, where he could run, play, and nibble on the grass. We always stayed close though, as we worried about hawks or other predators. These outdoor excursions became known as safaris in our family, and Fetch seemed to love them. Eventually, we decided that Fetch might be happier outside, where he could join other rabbits if he wanted to. We set up a safe space for him in our front yard, where we had a flower garden surrounded by brick walls. Fetch could come and go as he pleased, and for the next year, he stayed close to home. Then, one day, Fetch was gone. It was a sad moment for all of us, especially Elizabeth. We missed him terribly, and it felt like a piece of our family was missing. But about a year later, Fetch returned, bigger and stronger than before. He was just as friendly, showing no fear, and came right up to us, wanting to be petted. It was like he had never left, and we were overjoyed to have him back. Fetch stayed with us for a few more years, until 2009 when we moved to a new house. It was a bittersweet moment, saying goodbye to the house and to Fetch, who had been such a big part of our lives. We never saw him again after that, but the memories we made with him, the joy he brought to our family, will stay with us forever. Even now, years later, I can't help but smile when I think about Fetch and Buddy and the little adventure that started with a simple lawn mowing session. It's funny how life can surprise you with the most unexpected gifts, and how a tiny, trembling bunny can become such a beloved part of your family.